It's snowing, the wind is howling, and it is a pale twilight in the sky. It is toward the end of winter, late August, in the Havens, and soon, this day perhaps, the sun will make its first appearance just briefly over the horizon for a little while. In the twilight, our main character, Wiglaf, trudges through the knee-deep snow beside his faithful companion, Griff, the husky. The two of them head a few hundred yards from their cabin into the hunter's lodge, where their friends, Nan and Owena, have a fire roaring on the hearth and another fire in the cook pit. It's nearly lunchtime, and they're getting ready to have some roast deer. The wind howls outside. They talk a little bit. They drink some mulled cider. They tell stories. And then suddenly, there is a knock on the door. Griff barks and growls. Who would be out in this terrible weather at the end of winter? Wiglaf picks up his iron-tipped spear, and Nan grabs a spare hatchet that he uses for firewood, and the two of them go to the doors of the hunting lodge. Wiglaf pulls it open with one hand, holding his spear in the other, and they see a man in a parka and boots and gloves with a long beard, covered in snow, pale, bluish face, blue lips, clearly on the verge of frostbite, perhaps death from the cold. He stumbles forward and collapses onto the floor, and then he stops moving. At first they think he's dead, but then they realize there is a pulse, and so Nan and Wiglaf drag him to the fire, and Owena gets some of that hot mulled cider, and they pour some of it down into his mouth past his blue lips, and eventually the man chokes and coughs, and his eyes flutter open, and he begs for help. Help, he says. They've taken my family. Hello and welcome. I am Scrapperlock, and this is Ironsworn Antarctica, Session 1. In the previous episode, we did our Session 0, where we created our character, Wiglaf of Longhaven. Wiglaf is someone who has a lot of heart and some fighting ability. Not super smart, but he's somewhat intelligent. He has been accused of the murder of his friend Honshu, but he insists that a beast named Grendel, a giant monstrous creature, killed his friend and devoured it, which is why the body was never found. The people in Longhaven mostly don't believe Wiglaf, but his friends Nan and Owena do. And so they have allowed him to stay in their spare cabin a few hundred feet up into the woods past the hunting lodge, and he's been staying with them over winter. Now, after thinking about this, what I decided was Wiglaf has been there through the long, dark winter of the Antarctic, that he was out in the fading autumn, April-ish of the previous season with Honshu when he was attacked by this monstrosity, Grendel. And I've actually got a picture. This is a photoshopped picture of the Indominus Rex from Jurassic World. And I've filled out the details of Grendel. He's an epic ranked creature, 16 feet tall. He's a giant feathered velociraptor because he's supposed to be bird-like, with fangs and 4 eyes and a semi-transparent camouflaging ability. He can hide in the trees and stuff, just fade into them. A powerful bite. He's very fast. He runs like a velociraptor, and he is able to mind control lesser creatures. I haven't decided yet whether there are going to be other Grendels, maybe little ones that he can mind control. But what I've decided is that he can control any creature that is of a rank troublesome or dangerous, which are the two lowest ranks in Ironsworn, if it's an animal or a beast, and of that lower rank. So one of the things I have here is a note that I'd wanted to remind myself is that we need to make our first move to swear an iron vow. What we decided was that the inciting incident is that Sabine would come in here and say that his family was missing and had been taken, and we don't know who took them. We're going to find that out now. And we don't know who even is in the family. We're going to have to find that out now as well. And then we have to make this first vow. And it is possible to fail a vow, and I have some ideas of what will happen when we fail our vows with Wiglaf, and what that will mean. But let's see what happens, and hopefully we will succeed at the first one. So before we actually make the vow, we need to figure out what happened and who Sabine's family is. And I've summarized the Ask the Oracle here, so that I don't have to keep switching back between that table and this NPC sheet. So the first question is, how big is Sabine's family? It says that in the inciting incident that his family has been taken. So that implies that there are at least two. It's not just his wife or just one child. And so we assume that his spouse is around, but perhaps not. So I guess the first question is, does the family include a wife? And I'm going to say that's likely. So if we roll a 26 or higher, we will, the answer will be yes. And I rolled a 48. So yes, it includes a wife who we will have to name. And then the next question is, we need to know how many children. So he presumably has at least one child, since it's family, not just spouse. So the question is, does he have more than one child? And I'm going to say that's a 50-50 chance. And we roll a 58, so he does have more than one child. Does he have more than two children? Does he have more than two? I'm going to say it's unlikely he has more than two, and we roll an 82, so he does. Does he have more than three? I'm going to say it's a small chance he has more than three. And we roll a 43, so he does not. So he has 3 children. So he has a wife and 3 children. Now, one of the questions I had with this quest is whether or not it might be possible that the situation is related to our settlement issue, right? The settlement trouble for Longhaven, the town that is near Red Hall, and where Wiglaf and Nan and Owena are from originally. Their settlement trouble is reckless warmongering. Now, initially I thought, well, the leader of the town might be trying to raise an army to raid a nearby settlement. Perhaps that's true. Or maybe there's someone from a nearby town, another town, that's trying to warmonger against them. What if somebody's trying to press these people into military service? So let's sort of ask the Oracle and see what the Oracle tells us. So let's go back to our inciting incident, right? And the first question is someone warmongering against Longhaven? Right, so that's our first question, and we're going to ask the Oracle whether that's true or not. So again, I'm going to say it's actually likely that someone's warmongering against Longhaven. I don't kind of picture Longhaven being a town that would raise its own army. So let's imagine that there's perhaps a group of raiders who are nearby, and they are like maybe a chief and a warlike clan, and they're trying to perhaps conquer or warmongering against Longhaven. So I'm going to say that that's likely, and we roll a 40, so that is true. So what we're going to say is there is a nearby, like a nearby camp of raiders, and they're warmongering against Longhaven, and I would think they've kidnapped the family. So what we're going to say is that the family was kidnapped by some raiders who are warmongering against Longhaven. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to jot that down, and then I will unpause. All right, so I've now figured out what we want to do. So Sabine's family, his wife and his 3 children, were taken captive by the clan chief, whose name I've decided is Kova, randomly generated on the oracles. Kova's planning is trying to raise an army and raid the nearby villages so that he can eventually become like a chieftain over all of the villages. His name is Kova the Hammer. Kova the Hammer is, and I just want to put this there so I remember it. Kova the Hammer. He is a leader. I just chose that, and also I chose the goal of seizing power from the list. His disposition is suspicious, which is perfect. His descriptor is smug. I chose his activity as leading, and he is from the settlement of Duskmoor. All we know about Duskmoor is that it's ruled by Kova the Hammer, and they've raised an army, and they're going out to try and conquer the surrounding villages. So as a preamble to the conquest, they raided the perimeter of Longhaven and kidnapped some of the townsfolk. So let's just sort of zoom into the map here. I've done a little bit of work. We have, as you can see, I have like a little marker for Wiglaf. I also have put markers for Longhaven and Red Hall, and then if I click on them, at least in theory, if I click on them, I should be able to be taken. So Longhaven is, there's reckless warmongering, and so what's happening is that Kova and his forces are trying to conquer this town and make Kova ruler of it. All right, and so that's what's kind of going on, and Wiglaf right now is in Red Hall, and I'll move the symbol for him around the map as he goes from place to place. We're going to need to figure out exactly where Duskmoor is probably, but we won't do that yet because we still have to figure out whether he's even going to be able to swear this Iron Vow. So Sabine tells his story. He says, we were hunkered down for the winter, and we heard screams and shouts outside, and the horses started to bay and cry, and all of a sudden there were people burning down our barn and lighting fire to the hay and releasing the horses out to the wild and stealing them, and then they came for us, and I tried to fight them off, but they were too much for me, and they knocked me unconscious, and they took my wife and my 3 children, and I want them back. And I don't have any way to get them back because Kova's forces are powerful. And Longhaven only has a few wardens, and the wardens aren't enough to fight a whole army. There aren't armies, of course, in the Ironlands. And so he says, I don't know what to do. I just don't know what to do. My family will be lost if someone doesn't help. And so Wiglaf has now healed up from his his very long winter with his friends in the hunting lodge here at Red Hall. And he's feeling like he wants to do something. Remember, if we go back to the personality, he's driven to regain his honor. And of his motivations, he wants to regain honor and gain acceptance. So he wants to get revenge on Grendel, but he has no idea where Grendel is, and he doesn't necessarily want to confront him right away anyway, because the thing is dangerous. He wants to maybe learn more about Grendel before trying to attack him again. And so what Wiglaf might think is, well, if I can rescue these people and bring them back to Longhaven, maybe I will gain some credibility with the people of Longhaven. They won't just think of me as the guy who murdered Honshu, which I didn't do. So he's holding a spear which has iron on it, so he can make an iron vow. So as the very chilled Sabine hunches over the fire and over his mulled cider and takes another sip of it, Wiglaf stands. And he looks at Nan and Owena, and he kind of shares a look with Nan, who realizes what this young guy is going to do, because Nan's older. He's in his 40s or 50s, and he thinks Wiglaf's kind of young and impulsive. And Wiglaf says, I will help you. And he puts the spear across his knees, and he grasps the iron tip of the spear, and Sabine's eyes widen as he realizes this person is about to make an iron vow. And so he clutches the iron, and he draws a little bit of blood across his thumb to swear the vow and smears it along the iron. And he says, Sabine, I don't know you well. I've only met you a few times in the village, but I will not allow your wife and your children to be taken captive by these horrible raiders. And I swear an iron vow that I will do everything I can to get them back. Okay. And so that is his iron vow for the inciting incident. So now we have to make our first move in Ironsworn, which is to roll our 6-sided die and the 2 10-sided challenge dice. And we're going to swear an iron vow, right? So he's swearing to complete a quest, and we roll plus heart. He's got a 4 heart, so we roll plus 4. We're not making this vow to a person or a community that we share a bond with, but you can see how it's good to get bonds because that would give us plus 1. So let's go ahead and roll the dice. And remember, we need to beat at least one of them to get a success. And we're rolling at plus 4, so this gives us some bit of a chance, but we'll see what happens. And we get 3 and 4 on the 10-sided die and a 2 plus 4 or 6 on our 6-sided die. So a 6 is beating both a 4 and a 3, so it is a strong hit. So on a strong hit, we are emboldened. It is clear what we must do. Well, it's pretty clear that he's going to have to track these guys back toward Duskmoor. Now, it's possible if this happened recently enough and he's a hunter, that he might be able, with Griff to help track, he might be able to catch these guys if there aren't a lot of them. He might be able to catch them before they get all the way back to the camp. If they make it back to the camp, then he might have a bit of a problem because he's not sneaky. He doesn't have a high shadow. And that's going to make it really hard for him to sneak into the camp. But we'll see what happens. He takes plus 2 momentum. So go back to our character sheet. We're going to move the momentum up to 4. So this is good because you can burn momentum, as I've said before. So now if I roll a 1 and the challenge die is a 4, we can burn our momentum and 0 out a 4 and maybe make it go from a miss to a weak hit or something like that. So we have successfully done our inciting incident to find Sabine's missing family and rescue Sabine's missing family, I'm going to say here, from Kova, from Kova's forces. All right, and so I've marked this as a dangerous vow. That means that each time we gain a milestone, we get 2 boxes checked off. So you can see at the top, bonds, you need 4 checks to make a box. So I've got 3 of them marked here, and that's kind of the way you do it in Ironsworn. You either check the entire box, or you check a slash or 2 slashes or something like that, depending on how difficult it is. So bonds are kind of like epic vows. You get 1 slash across the box for each success. And we have 3 bonds right now. Now, I think that if we succeed at this, then we might be able to get a bond, perhaps with Longhaven or perhaps with Sabine, but we'll see what happens. So we've got a strong hit, and it's clear what we have to do next. So it's still kind of just as the sun is sort of moving over the horizon, getting ready to go back down, it's still kind of twilight. And I do want to point out, so I've done this one thing. I went to a website where they have the light regime, and so the dark black is night, and then the gray is different levels of twilight. And I've got our current date here, and you can look at the graph yourself if you want. It shows the different types of twilight. So right now it's about 2 in the afternoon, which is right here along this line, and so it is daylight. The sun is like, it's in like the sunset position. It's not going to get above that at this point in near the South Pole. And then as we go into the evening, it'll get to be like civil twilight and nautical twilight, and eventually it'll be like astronomical twilight where you really can't see that much, but you can kind of see the horizon. So we have a few hours left of light, and so our character is now going to have to try and track these guys. So the first thing he's going to have to do is kind of go back to where Sabine's house is. So he says to Sabine, describe to me where on the edge of town your house was. And Sabine gives him some directions. And then he says, all right, I'm going to get some supplies together. And obviously, Nan and Awena try to talk him a little bit out of it. But he says, no, I've sworn an iron vow, and I am going to do this. And so they say, okay, and they give him some bread and food and some supplies. So he has some rations. They give him a little bit of meat for Griff to eat. And of course, he's also a hunter. He has a dagger, he has a spear, and he's got a dog with him. And he is going to set out. So he leaves the hunting lodge. He goes back to his cabin, gets whatever supplies he needs, gets his weapons, gets his shield, and then he marches out and heads down the trail, down the hill, and toward the area of Longhaven. But he's just going to go to the outskirts, and he's going to reach the sort of the outskirts, and he's going to first go to the burned down barn and the broken down house where this incident took place. And what he's going to do is he's going to let Griff kind of sniff around and see maybe if he can pick up a scent. And while there's still light in the sky, Wiglaf is going to search around this area. And what I think he's going to do is called a gather information move. He's going to search an area trying to see if he can track these guys. And one of the things that we have here is if we look at the character and we go into the assets, Griff the dog is sharp. So when you gather information, you can add +1 and we get additional momentum. So we're going to make the gather information move. And we're going to roll plus wits. So it's a good thing we've got Griff with us because we only have a 2 wits, so it's +2 and then +1 for Griff, right? So it's +3. And we're going to see, can we gather information? Can he figure out where these guys went and maybe how many of them there are? So he looks around the area and he tries to see what he can find, and we roll. And we get a 10 and a 2 on our challenge dice, and our action die, our D6, is a 1 +3 is 4. So that's a weak hit. So on a hit, we take +1 extra momentum. So on a weak hit, the information complicates our quest or introduces a new danger. We get +1 momentum. So before we do any of that, we get 2 momentum, 1 from Griff being sharp and 1 from this. So we're at 6 momentum now, which means we can burn momentum to clear anything as high as a 6 roll. And then if we go back to the move, it says that the information complicates the quest or introduces a new danger. So I'm going to pause while I think about this, and I'll come back when I've figured out what the complication is. All right, so what I've thought about is they did steal a horse from the barn, but these raiders also were horsed. And so this makes it complicated because he doesn't have a horse, Wiglaf. He's got a dog, but he can only follow on foot, which means these guys are probably going to outpace him, and they're going to get back to Duskmoor before he can get to them. So they might be, say, a day's ride away on horseback, but it might be 2 days' journey on foot for him to get there, which means he's now going to have to sort of, let's say, undertake a journey or something and see if he can get there. And then he's going to have to figure out what to do because he's going to end up in a place that's like a war camp town rather than a simple settlement. And he's going to have to try to figure out how to get in there and deal with that. So we have our 6 momentum. And I do want to point out, I misspoke. When you burn momentum, you can clear dice below the momentum. So if we have 6 momentum, we can clear a 5 or lower. We cannot clear a 6. So even with 10 momentum, you can clear a 9, but you can't clear a 10. All right, so Wiglaf has searched the area and he sees the footprints, and Griff sort of sniffs around and barks at him and brings his attention to the tracks of the horses, and he realizes these guys are on horses. So either I'm going to need to get a horse, to borrow a horse from somebody, and then how am I going to get Griff there, or I'm going to have to kind of come on foot, and it's going to take me a little longer to get there. So, well, he's got his supplies and he's got a tent and stuff with him. So he says, all right, well, let's just go. And we're going to head out into the wilderness, into the cold, and we're going to try and find these guys and track them. So let me pause again as I think about how I want to do this. right, so I think the first question is, how far away is Duskmoor? Did they go a ways to raid this village, or are they really close? I was thinking they might be very close, but maybe not. I've got a little rule of thumb on the map. If it's less than 5 hexes, we don't have to undertake a journey. We can just do something like gather information to follow a track. So it would just be another gather information roll. Although you're really not supposed to make the same move twice in a row. We can maybe try something else like securing an advantage. But maybe facing danger, perhaps. But first I want to see how far is it. So let's ask the Oracle. And I'm just going to say 50-50 chance. Is Duskmoor less than 5 hexes away? And the Oracle says it is. I rolled a 65. So we don't have to undertake a journey. So I think what we're going to do is I think we're going to face danger. So what Griff and Wiglaf are going to do is they're going to head across the terrain, and they're going to be planning to go there by stealth, I guess, which is another one that he's not good at. It's shadow, but they're going to try to sneak up onto this encampment. It's going to take them a couple of days, and then they're going to see if they can kind of get there without being seen. So the Hound doesn't really do us any good at this point, because all he does is gather information for us. And so what we're going to want to do is cross the terrain. So we're going to do that. He's probably also going to have to make camp, right? But he's not really recovering in the wild. So I think we're going to face danger. That's sort of like the generic move. So it's a catch-all for complex actions that aren't covered by any other move. So they're going to cross the terrain. It's going to take them 2 days. And what they're going to do is, as they approach the camp and follow the tracks, as they approach sort of the town, as they approach Duskmoor, they're going to try to sneak up on it. Maybe hide in the trees, in the woods nearby, and see if they can at least get fairly close without being detected. So it may be that there are guards. It may be that they will be detected. So the way I'm going to interpret this is, if we fail this, then we're going to get seen by maybe an outlying guard, and it might, come down to a battle between us and the guard. If we succeed at it, then we get to the town's perimeter without being detected. And I'm imagining the town has sort of a palisade of walls or something around it, but we'll find out when we get there. So the first thing that we're going to do is see if we can sneak up to it. So with Griff in the lead, he follows the trail. They go for a day. They make a camp, start a fire, keep warm, huddle together in the tent. And then the next day, they know that they're getting closer to Duskmoor. He has some idea where it is because it's fairly local. And now he's going to try to sneak up on it. And so we're going to be rolling plus shadow. That's not good for him either, and it's only +2. So let's hope we get lucky. And we rolled a 6. So we have 8 total against a 6 and a 4. So that's actually a strong hit. So we are successful, and we get +1 momentum. So our momentum goes up to 7. And Griff and Wiglaf make it to the outskirts, sort of just along the edge of the town. And so I guess we need to ask the Oracle some questions now. So the first question I have is the town surrounded by some sort of a wall, like a wooden palisade? I'm going to say that that's likely. And it's a 34, so yes. So the town is surrounded by a wooden palisade. And we figure there's probably a couple of gates. And I'm going to say, are the gates guarded? I'm going to say that's almost certain. And it's a 79, so yes. So the gates are guarded. Do the gates have just one guard or multiple guards? I'm going to say that it's... I'm going to say it's either 1 or 2 guards. And I'm going to say it's likely that it's 2 guards. And we'll roll. And we get a 99. So, yes, there are 2 guards posted at each gate. So we'll say there are 2 gates. One sort of toward where Griff and Wiglaf are, and one on the other side of the town, sort of a road that goes through the town, and then there's a bunch of houses and stuff inside, and there's this walled palisade around it. So Dustmore is surrounded by a wooden palisade with two gates, one on the east and one on the west side, which on our map, because north is at the center of the map, or sort of at the edge of the map, and south is in the center, it's sort of the top and bottom of the map. And so that's where the two gates are. There's a road that goes through it, buildings in between, and the army and the forces of Kova are inside the walls, and that would be where the prisoners are as well. So these guys have reached the walls, and they have to figure out how they're going to get inside. And that is what we will leave for the next session. We're going to stop here. I know we didn't get a huge amount accomplished, but when you're first starting out a game of Ironsworn, it takes a while to kind of build your momentum and get the story designed. We know that our main character, Wiglaf, is now sort of hiding in the woods a few, maybe dozen feet, maybe 50, 100 feet from this wooden palisade that surrounds Duskmoor, and he's going to have to try to find his way in, sneak his way in, maybe something else, and see if he can get in there and try and rescue these people. One thing I do want to do before we finish actually is I feel like we have at this point reached a milestone. We've found the location of where these guys were taken. And so that is a reach a milestone move. So let's go ahead and do that. And that is on a dangerous crest to mark to progress. So that means we get sort of 2 progress done. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of fill that in. So 1, 2. So we've completed 2 progress. And the way this works in Ironsworn is you roll your challenge dice against the amount of progress to see if you've completed your quest. So we're not ready yet. We aren't done, but another couple of milestones like getting inside and finding the 2 of them and getting them out, that would get us to maybe 8 progress, and then we'd be done with this quest probably. But we will leave that until next time. So until then, I am Scrapperlock, and this has been Ironsworn Antarctica.